Hello and welcome to this Q&A session. Today we will be talking with Prakash Loungani, who is an advisor in the IMF's research department and co-chair of the IMF's group on jobs and growth. He is also an adjunct professor of economics at the Vanderbilt University Owen School of Management, where he has taught in the executive MBA program for the past 15 years. So thank you, Prakash,
thank you
for joining us today. So when you published the International Jobs Report back in November 2015, you were worried about the global labor market. So what is your latest assessment now, following the 2016 edition?
So we just released the IJR, the International Jobs Report, as you know, at the ministry. And I think right now we are even a little bit more worried. And the reason for that is that many of the big emerging markets like Brazil are slowing down compared to even last year. And the other reason is that as oil prices have continued to fall, many of the countries that are producing oil, like Russia, like Nigeria, are starting to also look a little bit soft in their outlook, more worrisome. So what we are afraid of is that as these countries, as their growth slows down, the unemployment situation there could get worse. The employment could falter and participation rates could fall. So I would say compared to even 3 months ago when we released the IJR last time, the situation has gotten a little more troubling. And since we care about people's jobs, it's something that we feel we should bring to the attention of the governments, of policymakers, so that they can do something about it.
You also mentioned in the report that unemployment is slowly returning to its pre-crisis level. So can we really talk about a recovery, or is unemployment slowly falling because people are discouraged and are no longer looking for jobs?
That's a very good question. So we have to distinguish the situation in the advanced economies from the emerging markets. In the advanced economies, indeed, the situation is very slowly returning to normal. So the United States has a pretty robust labor market at the moment, creating 200,000 jobs every month on net. Europe, unemployment is still high, but starting very slowly to go down. So when we spoke in the IJR that the unemployment rate was returning to pre-crisis level, we had in mind mostly the advanced economies. In the emerging markets, indeed, as I just started to say, the situation is quite different. There, during the crisis, the unemployment rate did not go up, and we were very happy about this because we said it shows the resilience of emerging markets, that they are not completely dependent on the US or Europe as they used to be. But now we are seeing the slowdown of growth in the major emerging markets, the so-called BRICS, all of them are slowing. Brazil, Russia, China, perhaps India is the exception. So you have big countries, very populous countries, with millions of people in the labor force are slowing down. And then on top of that, you have the oil producers that are in a bit of trouble because oil prices have stayed so low for so long. So it is a mixed picture. Advanced countries slowly recovering in terms of unemployment, emerging markets looking more vulnerable.
Mr. Prakash, please keep talking about the crisis. Many experts are talking about world economic changes. Do you think, Mr. Prakash, those changes have an effect on labor markets, especially in developing and emerging countries?
I think when we talk about an evolution or a change, I think we are thinking more long-term and not just the crisis. In many emerging markets, we are now taking people from agriculture and moving them to industry, moving them to services. So in the emerging markets, there is an ongoing process of structural transformation that is going on, and that is going to affect the labor markets that is going to affect unemployment rate. When people are in the agriculture sector, in some sense, they always have a job. They are always on the farm. They may not be very happy. They may be underemployed, but they always have a job and they always have something to eat. When people are moving out of agriculture and coming to urban areas, coming to cities like Rabat, and they're coming to work in manufacturing or industry, then they can be laid off. Then they can be in a position where they don't have a job. So we are moving in the emerging markets to a situation where unemployment can seem to be a bigger problem, just because there are more people in industry and more people in services. So I think that we have to be prepared that it will seem as though suddenly we have a major unemployment problem, but what's happening is that we are also transforming these economies from agriculture towards other industries. So it's a good development, but one that will lead to some unemployment in the long term that we should be prepared for and try to bring down.
As you said, that many emerging and developing countries are affected by these world economic changes. One might think that many sectors are also suffering. In your opinion, do you think there is a loss of jobs due to low prices in both agriculture and oil sectors? So what are the main countries that are affected?
I think the situation in agriculture is a little more cyclical. I mean, food prices go up and down quite a bit, and when they go up, the sector is doing well, and suddenly you can have a collapse in food prices and the sector is not doing well. But as I said, in agriculture, you don't see open unemployment because people, in a sense, are always there on the farm and reporting themselves as working. So in that sense, I don't think that the food prices always leads to a big open unemployment problem. But the oil prices are different. I think there you may see some increases in unemployment. As I said, there are countries like Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, Russia, that are all being affected by the low oil prices. Now, many of these countries do not have a tradition of measuring unemployment very accurately and accurately reporting changes in unemployment. So it could be that we don't see the pressures that are developing in the labor market in the unemployment statistics. But surely, when you are a major exporter of oil and the price of oil has fallen to the floor, it is going to have some impact on your labor market. We may not see it in unemployment. We may see it in people having to work fewer hours. We may see it in people's wages being cut. We may see pressures on the fiscal situation, which can then have impact on the labor market. So it will not always be felt in the unemployment rate, but it will be felt in the labor market. And that's one of the things that, frankly, we are aiming for in the International Jobs Report, is to expand the coverage, not just talk about unemployment, but talk about, what's happening to people's wages, what's happening to hours of work, what's happening to conditions of work. Okay? So I think the oil price decline, because it is expected to persist for a long time, could indeed have a major impact on the labor market and perhaps also on measured unemployment rates. We may see them go up.
I would like to ask you now about youth in the labor market. As youth unemployment in the MENA region is among the highest in the world, many people ask about the determinants of this situation. So in your opinion, what are the key factors behind youth unemployment, especially among educated people? And have countries adopted policy measures to address this issue?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right, and this is a very unusual situation in Morocco, in countries in this region, which is that educated people have higher rates of unemployment than people who are not educated. Skilled people in this country and others have unemployment rates that are higher than unskilled people. This is, a completely unheard of situation in many other countries. In most countries, the lowest unemployment rates are among the educated people, and people with high school or no degrees have high unemployment rates. So clearly this is a situation that is very abnormal from the perspective of what we know of labor markets. So why is this happening? I mean, as you know, one reason is that here education does not seem to be preparing people adequately for the skills that the private sector is seeking. The other reason in this region is that public sector jobs in the government are valued quite highly. And what happens is that educated people prefer to be unemployed and wait in line for one of those public sector jobs rather than be absorbed in the private sector. So there is this phenomenon of queuing, of just saying, well, I'm going to just wait and wait until this job in the private sector that I really want and is going to come open. So I think this has to change, and this has to change by having a more dynamic private sector, by changing the set of policies so that the private sector is generating good jobs. And the education has to be transformed so that it is, truly providing the skills that people need. When I talk to people here in this country and in the region, they say that often the education that's provided is kind of a bookish knowledge. It's kind of a textbook type reading of textbooks, or just kind of not as practical as it can be. And so I think that is a really challenge to the education institutions here to provide practical skills that would be useful for companies. And so it has to be worked on both ends. The education has to be better, and the private sector has to try to be a little more dynamic in hiring.
Yes. So there is a consensus that labor market in the MENA region suffers from significant gender gap in terms of labor force participation. So the question is, why are women experiencing such low rates of labor participation in this region, and how about other regions of the world?
Again, this region is unusual in having low rates of female labor force participation. Now, part of this is cultural, and we should respect that. Female labor force participation is different from some other indicators. Let's think of an indicator like infant mortality. How many kids die at a very young age? I think we can all agree that the level of infant mortality should be zero. And culture, I cannot think of any culture that would say, no, some infant mortality is okay. Everybody would like that kids should not die in childbirth or at a young age. So culture does not play a role in infant mortality. But when it comes to another indicator like female labor force participation, I think we have to respect that cultures are different. So I don't think we should just hold up the standards in the Western countries and say, look, in Denmark or Norway, 90% of the women work and you are here at 45. We should respect that, some countries may say we are at 60 and that's fine. But that said, when I talk to people, including, as you know, I was teaching the course in labor markets, and there were women in my class, and I asked them what they think about participation, and they said that they want choice. They said that they know of many of their friends who are just as educated as they are, but who have decided without any pressure from anyone to be at home and be with their kids. And I think we have to respect that societies will make different choices in this manner. So I think that we should not treat it as a problem of saying we have to get to the Western level, but I think that nevertheless it is too low. It can be raised. I think there are more women out there who want to work, who are not being given the opportunity at present. And we know this because even though Morocco, for instance, has done very well over the past 10 years, the participation rate has not increased. In most societies, when you have this kind of growth for 10 years that Morocco has had, participation has increased a lot. So I think certainly it is not just cultural. We have to respect the culture, but we have to make sure that we give women the opportunity to work if they want to. Restricting them does not make any sense because, suppose I said that, every engineer had to be at least 6'2" to be an engineer. You would say, well, that's a very stupid rule. I mean, because I would be excluding some short people who can be great engineers, and I would be allowing some guy who's not very good to become an engineer. So if you put a rule like that, everybody can see it's silly. So it's the same way with female participation. Women and men are equally skilled. So each one of them should have the option. It shouldn't be you have to be 6'2" to work in this industry. They should have the equal opportunity because that is what will make the society most productive. And then freely, some men may choose to stay at home and some women may choose to stay at home, and we should just respect that.
Among many factors leading to this situation of women and young people in the labor market, you highlighted growth, skills demand and supply mismatch, and also labor market functioning. This last, labor market regulation, is considered like a complex issue. In your opinion, what are the elements of an effective labor market regulation system?
Well, we should sort of back up and think about, what is it that we are trying to achieve in the labor market with regulations and with other institutions. I think that what we are trying to do is to achieve efficiency, but at the same time provide protection to workers. I think, there are some people who believe very firmly in free markets and they say free markets will take care of everything. But I think most people believe that a completely free market would not provide enough protection to workers. So that's why we have all these regulations. That's why the government steps in. So we have to provide some basic protection to workers, but in a way that does not hurt efficiency. What do I mean by efficiency? We would all like that productivity growth should be high. That is the basis of income growth. That's what makes our incomes grow, and productivity growth is high. And the other thing we would like is that we would like the unemployment rate on average to be low in the long term. So as long as we can provide protection in a way that does not hurt efficiency and that does not lead to high unemployment, I think this is fine. This should be the basis on which we design regulations. And once we keep that framework in mind, we can all agree that companies should provide some employment protection. A guy should not, or a woman should not be fired for no reason at will. There should be some protection given to workers from just getting fired. But we also know that it should not be excessive. If it's excessive, then the employee will get comfortable. They will say, oh, no matter what I do at my job, I'm protected. A person like that is not going to be innovative. He's not going to be efficient. Okay? So we know we shouldn't go overboard and have excessive regulations. Same thing with an institution that is not very common in emerging markets, but will start to be if, as we discussed, these societies become more like advanced economies in their industrial structure. This is the institution of giving unemployment benefits to people when they become unemployed. Now, again, I think this is a good thing because when a person becomes unemployed, his or her family can suffer a lot if you don't give them any money. You don't want a person to take his kid out of school just because he got unemployed. So I think giving some unemployment benefits is a good idea. But again, if you give somebody too much unemployment benefits, then the person will sit at home and watch TV. They will not do anything to search for a job. So I think, as I said, if you keep in mind that we are trying to balance efficiency with giving protection, we will be able to design institutions in a sensible manner, not giving too much protection to workers and not going overboard so that we kill efficiency.
Thank you, Sir Prakash. Can you give us any concrete example of countries where the labor regulation system benefit for both workers and employers?
Yeah, I think some of the institutions that I was describing, I think help both sides. So even think of the system of employment protection, not allowing companies to fire people at will. You might think that that is just good for the workers, but not for the company. But that's not true. When you give employment protection, both the firm and the worker know that they're trying to form a durable relationship. Both sides know that it cannot be terminated. When you know that you're going to be in a long-term match, both sides make investments. Companies are more likely to send employees for training if they know that that employee is going to be with them for a long time. The employee is more likely to accept training if they know that they're going to stick with the company for a while. So this is an example where giving protection to workers against dismissal, against unfair firing, helps both sides by having both sides invest in training and making the person more productive. And this has been shown in many studies that the amount of training that a company provides to an employee depends on how durable the match is and how much employment protection is being provided.
My last question will be connected to immigration. Mr. Prakash, do you think that immigration helps or harms countries of origin and also countries of destination?
I think that the evidence is actually quite clear that immigration is a situation that is good for both sides. First thing is that the person who gains the most is the migrant himself, because generally the migrant is going from a situation that is poor or poorer, is going from a situation that can sometimes be desperate to a better place. So the migrant gains a lot for sure. I know this as an immigrant myself. I mean, going from India to the United States was for me the biggest jump of my life. It changed my salary profile. I changed the amount of education I got. So the biggest beneficiary of my immigration was myself. Okay, but I also know that from working and from what I have given back to the United States, that this United States has also gained from me. And that is the experience that study after study has shown, that immigrants contribute to the society that they go to. Now, in some localities, in some cities, the pressure of lots of immigration could, in the short run, create some problems. We should not deny that. But, over the long run, I don't know of any study that has not shown the benefits of immigration. Now, on the other side, again, in small countries, in small societies, having some of your best people leave can cause a problem. If your doctors leave and you're in a small island country, that's the problem. But again, outside of these small cases, small island or small country cases, again, evidence shows that it is beneficial even for the home country to have its people go elsewhere. They send back money, remittances, right? And often they come back and form companies. If you think of the Indian software miracle, the Indian software IT sector just blossomed out of nowhere. That was Indian immigrants who had been in the IT industry in the US coming back to India to form the IT sector. Even if they don't come back, they can send technology, know-how, they can give you contacts. So I think there are benefits to both sides, and unfortunately, the economic benefits are overshadowed by the politics of the situation. Often, for understandable reasons, countries are worried about the character of their society, their homogeneity, their cultural beliefs, their cultural nature changing when you get a lot of immigrants. So, one can understand that. I mean, it's their home. But I think on economic grounds, the benefits are immense and quite clearly documented.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash, for all of your time. Thank you, Rim.
Thank you, Rim. Thank you, Tayo.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash.